This is OFN NFL Preview on the Our Lads Football Network. Week number 13 in the books as we begin previewing Week 14, Thursday night, New England and the Rams. And hopefully, COVID will not give us any more Tuesday or Wednesday games the rest of the season. I've had enough of those. Mark Lawrence, how you doing?
I'm doing just absolutely terrific, Greg, and it's odd that you mentioned about Tuesday and Wednesday games because in my database just this morning, I did a search of how NFL teams are faring after having to be taken out of their regular schedule and being forced to play either on a Monday, Tuesday, or Wednesday. And the bottom line is their next game, they are not too good.
Oh, okay. So that's not good for what, Baltimore and Dallas?
Not good for Baltimore, Dallas,
Washington, Pittsburgh?
Washington. You're exactly right. But, there are obviously situations within the situation, depending upon what they're coming off of,
Okay.
what the spread is, so forth, and everything like that. But if we hit on some of these games, I'll tell you exactly what they are in those games.
All right. Well, let's get right to it then. And we are going to start with Thursday Night Football. Patriots and the Rams. It's a 5-point spread. And we haven't touched up on this for a few weeks, but we did bring it up not too long ago. The Thursday night football game. Non-COVID seasons, you don't want to go on the road on Thursday Night Football. It's just the way that it is. Well, that's not the case for COVID 2020. Thursday Night Football teams on the road have won 8 out of 12 and have covered 10 out of 12. That's pretty damn good, especially if you like the Patriots like I do. I know this is not a good matchup for the Patriots because the Rams have a really good defense, especially against the run. Patriots need to run the football. I don't expect Jared Goff is going to have a lot of success. He didn't have success a couple of years ago in the Super Bowl with this team. He didn't have a lot of success against Brian Flores, who runs the same defense as Bill Belichick about a month ago. So it's not about that. It's about whether or not the Patriots can muster enough points on offense against the Ram defense. And that's definitely where I'm a little bit hesitant about, no question about it. I think what I like about this game more than anything are just the odds. I like the fact that I could take a Patriot team desperate for a win, get 2-1 on the money line. This could be my upset pick of the week. I see no reason why this shouldn't be one of my upsets when I can, like I said, when I can get a 2-1 on a Bill Belichick team as a dog in a desperate game. They're starting to have more confidence and they understand what their team is. They have to run the football. No more throwing the football. No more trying to throw. Hey, it worked against the Jets. That's fine. What doesn't? But it's not going to work against Houston, and it's not going to work against most of the other quality teams in the league. And that's why they went back to basics over the last few weeks. They got to run the football. And so that's what they're going to have to do. They're going to have to try and figure out a way to run the football against the Rams. And I look at probably a low-scoring game. Either way, I could see this being like a 20-17 type of game.
Well, that's what Bill Belichick would want, a low-scoring football game. He doesn't want to have to get into a shootout with anybody, especially the L.A. Rams in this particular football contest. My main concerns about New England are this. Number one, they're feeling awfully good about a 45-0 win last week in Los Angeles against the Chargers. But you look inside those numbers, and the numbers tell a different story. I don't know how they put up 45 points when they gained 291 yards in the game.
Special teams.
Well, okay. Well, special teams were there 2 weeks ago also because in their last 2 games, both wins, they've totaled 410 yards of offense.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that's 205 yards a game. Now, that's not going to cut the mustard against the L.A. Rams, okay, who own the league's number 2 ranked defense, the number 3 ranked offense. Really well-balanced football team are the L.A. Rams coming in here. And while Thursday road games have fared well during the COVID season so far, I don't see that happening here in this particular football game. I know New England has got this urgency right now about making the playoffs, sitting at 500 on the season, but you've also got an LA Rams football team that's also equally concerned about making the playoffs and enhancing their chances here as well. I like also, you look inside these numbers, the Rams have done really well against the AFC when they've been favored by more than 4 points, 6-1 to the number the last 7 times. I'm going to look for the Patriots to come back to earth in this football game, largely because of the fact of a lack of an offense taking on the number 2 defense in the National Football League.
I think I'm not a quarter better. I'm not a live better unless I want to hedge my bets. But there are a lot of people who like to watch the game for a quarter. Hey, maybe I'll throw some money at second half line, or after the first quarter, I'll go quarter by quarter, whatever. If you do that, I think I think watching this Patriot team the way they've played this season, I think they're pretty predictable. I think in the first quarter, if Cam looks good, if he looks like he's sharp early, if it looks like it's a pretty even game after the first quarter, considering they're getting 5 in this one, I think the Patriots are going to be just fine. But if it's first quarter, Rams take an early 7-0 lead, Cam's 1 for 3 for 9 yards, then I think then you might want to go the opposite way and take the Rams to win by 3 touchdowns. So I just think that's been the pulse of the Patriots this season, and I think we're going to find out pretty early on Thursday night whether or not this is going to be a close game.
Well, we likely will, because if the New England does trail in the football game, it's going to not be a lot they can do to come back offensively. If they can shut the Rams down, leave that first quarter with the lead, then they can put their run game into effect and control the clock. So, like you say, a lot's going to have to do in this football game, depending upon how these teams get out of the first quarter.
Speaking of hedge, we haven't talked about it that much this season, and I think this is an important one to always bring up, because there are people who wager on sports, and maybe they've been doing it for a few years, and I know you have done a lot, especially recently, to try and educate people with your academy and so forth. There's an education process. If you're going to be even if you're just a casual, somebody that casually wagers on games every week, you don't put a lot of money on it. So, okay, that's fine, but that doesn't mean that you shouldn't know what you're doing. And if you're going to do it, you want to make some money off of it, then there are a few things that I think you should know. And I think hedges are very important. And for instance, if you like a team, like I'm going to go right into what happened last week with the Steelers. I told you how much I liked the Steelers last week as a 7-point favorite, went down to 6, 5.5 even maybe at the kickoff. They were a Monday game. So here sat one of my top plays on a Monday. Okay, well, what I always do whenever I have a game I really like, that's a late Sunday and Monday, I like to, and I'm just going to round out a number. Let's just say I'm gonna wager. Let's say my idea is I'm gonna wager $100 or something like that on the team I like on Sunday or Monday. So what I'll do is I'll invest a few bucks, like maybe 5, 10, 15 bucks on a few small parlays. Let me see if I can hit a few early Saturday college, Sunday early games. So then with Pittsburgh as the final game, with my top game as my final game, so I don't have to invest $100. Maybe I get, and again, if I lose the $15 on, say, or $20 on a couple of parlays, well, all right, that's all right, no big deal. That was my investment anyway. That's how much. So now I'm going to put 80, not 100. Okay, fine, no big deal. So let's say we've got a nice situation like I had this week, where I hit the first 3 games of my parlay, and I'm sitting there with the Steelers. I've got everything riding on the Steelers. And I only had to invest almost $4 on my parlay because I had Indiana in the money line that started the parlay. So now I've got $100 riding on the Steelers on a $4 investment. Great, don't have to do anything. So what do you have now? This is a perfect hedge opportunity that you cannot take advantage of. No matter what the situation, no matter how confident you are about the team. Now you've invested $4. All you have to do is say, okay, I'll throw in maybe $25 on Washington now, and I'm okay with getting back 70, or $75. I'm not going to be greedy. Why do I need to be greedy? This way, if I lose the bet, no matter how confident I am, I've made money in a spot where I was real confident instead of losing X amount of dollars. So I think that's a good situation. It doesn't always work out that way. I just think that's an example I wanted to talk about because it happened to me this week, that you still end in-game hedge as well, because the Steelers were up 14-0. So if you didn't hedge before the game, that was a great opportunity for you to hedge during the game because the odds would have been even that much bigger, and you could have still hedged your money on Washington during the game.
Well, I understand where you're coming from, and I would say this, that you fell into the perfect parlay hedge. I'm not a big parlay guy at all, but I do know this, and I remember from my days of learning about this business and what to do and what not to do, and also speaking to someone that was pretty sharp. And when he was building parlays, okay, what he did was this, and you like I say, you fell into this, okay? When you have a parlay, a 3 or a 4 team parlay, let's say, and you want the very back end of your parlay, your very last play to be, number one, a late game, and number two, a favorite. Because if you have both, and you have your results before that late game favorite comes in, then you can hedge your bet by playing the dog, where you allow yourself a chance to win both ends and cash 2 tickets, because you could still fade the favorite, play the dog, and you can also cash with the dog if the dog loses. So you were on the right side there, because you would have cashed with Washington as a live dog in your parlay, which would have guaranteed you money, as opposed to losing the whole play with just the Steelers winning and not covering.
Okay, so what would be then a situation in something similar where you would say it's not a good time to hedge?
Well, I'm not a big proponent of hedging. Most of my hedging comes from playing numbers, good numbers, looking for spreads on games.
Well, give me an example then.
Well, an example would be if I took 4.5 on a football game and there was a big move in the football game on the dog and the game went down to 2 or 2.5, then you've got a 2-point spread to the number, okay, to hedge on, with a key number in between, that being 3. So it's the same with hedging on teasers, of which I'm not a proponent of at all.
No, I don't do teasers, no.
But when people do tease, okay, and I'll tell you, this is a real good story from a good friend of mine who ran the biggest sports book in Costa Rica, good personal friend of mine. They made all their money down there, all their money, on people who played teasers.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
That tells you right there in the fact of what you should not be doing,
sure.
Okay? But the people who did win playing teasers were people that would tease games through 2 key numbers. You would tease a game through a 7 and through a 3.
Yeah.
Okay, because you have 2 chances to fall on 2 key numbers. That's the only way to tease football games if you're going to tease games. I don't tease games because it's difficult enough picking one winner, let alone having to pick 2 to cash 1 ticket. Okay, so it just doesn't make a lot of sense to do just that. But when you're teasing, try to go through 2 key numbers, and when you're parlaying, leave yourself open in the back end to play a favorite so you can hedge out to the underdog.
And actually, that is how I learned about the win and cover statistics, which we've talked a lot about, because the tease thing, it was, of course, it's a whole idea of the word. They're teasing you by giving you all these extra points, and I'm a 7-point favorite. I could be a pick 'em basically. I mean, come on, and it just looks it looks great. But like we talked about with the win and cover, don't stop. Try not to worry about the points, because that's the exact reason it looks too good. Because just because it's a 7-point number doesn't mean that team is going to go ahead and lose but cover the spread. Because if they lose, I mean, if the team wins, chances are they're going to cover the spread. That's the whole idea. So I think you get suckered into the points and the additional. That's why I think it's very important to try and be like, look, don't worry about the points. If you think the team is going to have a serious chance of winning, great. If you don't think they have a chance of winning and all you're doing is taking the points, and you shouldn't be doing it. And I think it's the same thing across the board. If you have a 7-point number and you feel the need to have to go to 0, well, then you must not have a lot of confidence that the team can cover 7 when you should. Because if you like them to cover 7, don't worry about the points. Chances are they're going to cover the 7 if they win.
Well, that goes all to the fact of talking about betting live dogs. A live dog is basically a team that you feel can win the game straight up on the field.
Yes.
And if you feel that they have a realistic chance to win the game straight up on the field, it's all systems go, especially from a money line aspect as well.
Yep.
You can support your point spread play with the money line dog in the football game as well, and put yourself in a real good position to make a nice play, cash some nice tickets on a dog like that. So when I'm looking for what I call live dogs, I'm looking for teams that I feel are underdogs that can win the game.
Win the game. Yep.
Yes.
And that's why I love college football. I do much better in college football than the NFL, and a lot of it has to do with the fact that there's a lot more games, and it gives you a better chance to also take a look at the consistency, which I think, believe it or not, I believe there's more consistency in college football than there is in the NFL, which is weird. You would think, professionals, they should be a little bit more, you should have a little bit more of an idea of what's going to go on every week in the NFL. I just find that college football, there's a lot more consistency in what's going on. And I also love the fact that in college football, because there are so many games, for a fact, there's going to be about 3 to 5 games a week where there's going to be a double-digit dog that's going to win outright. Now, finding them is not easy, but they're always out there in college football. You never get that in the NFL. That'll happen a couple times a year. If you're a double-digit dog, you're going to win the game outright. You get multiple double-digit outright winners in college football every week.
Well, one of the main reasons you find that in college as opposed to pro football, Greg, is the fact that there's 3 times as many college games that play.
Yes.
So there's, that many more games in the market there that it will likely fall to a double-digit dog winning a game as opposed to the NFL. A rare case, like you say, when an NFL double-digit underdog wins the game. Last week we saw it with Rice taking down Marshall, a 20-point underdog.
Yeah.
Really, really rare. And the fact that Marshall was at home and undefeated. But
that was crazy. Yeah.
Yeah, it happened. I think it was the most bizarre result of the year.
Well, I told you I had Indiana last week.
There you go.
And they were a 13-point dog. They were. Yep. I was getting close to 4-1 on the money line, which I thought was crazy. I thought people were just going way out of hand because Penix was hurt. And this was a defensive first football team against a Wisconsin offense that hadn't done anything since week 1. So I thought that was a really good gamble. Anytime you can have a really good football team getting that many points, that's why I talked about the Patriots to start the show off. I look at it a lot and I go, I don't want to look at it on Friday and say if the Patriots win and come back and go, wow, I could have got the Patriots at 2-1 and I blew that opportunity. So I always look for good football teams in the NFL that wind up getting good value like that.
Well, I agree with you because, my approach to handicapping football is real simple. You put tape over the names of the teams and look at how they perform statistically and situationally. So if they're performing well statistically, it doesn't matter if they are the Jacksonville Jaguars. If they are the New York Giants, okay, as long as they're performing well statistically and they perform and match up well statistically against the other football team, it doesn't matter what their name is, okay? It'll get you to the right side of the football game, and then you can get into your handicap beyond that.
All right, well, let's talk about one of the big games on Sunday, Kansas City and Miami. And this is another good team, Miami, an 8-4 team with a plus 270 on the money line. But they are playing the defending world champions. So a team that has only 1 loss this season, a team that has dropped 4 straight covers. But in that spot, this is a good time to jump on Kansas City based on Andy Reid's history whenever his teams have dropped 4 straight covers. This is a tough one for me because of the fact that I don't know still what we're going to get from Tua. He's still kind of a mystery. He had a better game against the Bengals, but that's the Bengals. I think that considering how Kansas City kind of stumbled around against Denver, I can see Miami playing good defense against the Chiefs as well. So this is a tricky one. This is one that this is a tough one because I think it could go either way. So a lot of times, and I haven't decided what to do with this yet, but a lot of times when I'm not sure what to do in a game like this, and I think there's a chance for the team that's getting plus 270, I just go, hey, whatever. I'm just going to go ahead and take the team at plus 270 because I think they have a chance. because I could see Miami winning this game based on what I've seen from the Chiefs losing to Vegas, stumbling last week against Denver. They can't win every game. They're going to lose again at some point. But on the flip side, if Tua has a bad game, this could also be a blowout.
Well, I can understand where you're coming from because in Miami, you've got a team right now that's the number 6 seed in the AFC playoff race. So if you're talking about a playoff team that's a big home underdog, you can always make a case for them to win the football game. My reality snaps in when I look at Miami and I look at the rest of their football schedule here. They've got Kansas City, New England, Las Vegas, and Buffalo on deck.
Yeah.
Four teams that could all well be in the playoffs.
Yep.
I don't believe Miami's going to make the playoffs because of their rigorous schedule going out. I think they'll end up losing out to like Baltimore, overtaking them, who right now is, I believe, the number 9 seed, if you will, and perhaps even losing out to Las Vegas, if you will, in a sense like that. That'll be a key game, obviously, Miami and Vegas to determine that final playoff spot. But so, for the sake of the argument, I would say Miami will not be in the playoffs. I like Kansas City in the football game. I'm not a big proponent of laying points on the road, but this is the case in the time where Kansas City really kicks things into gear. Even their record with Pittsburgh, Pittsburgh owns the tiebreaker right now as we speak because of their record being undefeated in the AFC. But Kansas City is going to keep continuing to apply the pressure in a football game like this. And you've got Andy Reid, who's terrific in his career on the road in the National Football League. And you've got the Chiefs. You look at them, they're 12-1-1 to the spread on the road, coming off back-to-back wins against an AFC opponent. I think this is the right time of the year to be getting on Kansas City because, if for no other reason, they come in here off 4 straight point spread failures in a row, which spells value to Kansas City. You're not going to find this team playing that way going into the playoffs. They're going to end up fine-tuning their game between now and the end of the season, and I believe it'll start Sunday here at Miami.
Yeah, and as I mentioned before, in that spot, Andy Reid 5-1 straight up and against the spread as a favorite after coming into games dropping 4 straight covers.
Correct.
So that's a really good run that Andy Reid is on, which shouldn't be a surprise. Basically tells you that just like you said, that sooner or later the Chiefs are gonna break out. And that's why I said I can see if Tua doesn't play well, this could be that breakout that the Chiefs have. But I do respect the Dolphins. I'm going to be the exact opposite of you, because it sounds like to me that when you're looking at that final playoff spot, that you're leaning more towards Vegas and Baltimore. I'm actually going to say the winner of New England and Miami are going to get in.
Well, that could well be the case, or it might be, as I mentioned before, the winner of Vegas and Miami. Miami's got a lot of key critical games down the stretch, all against good quality teams that are going to be fighting them for playoff position. So it really doesn't matter whom it's going to be. It matters how they're going to perform on the field here. So they're just about ready to be tested. And I know they're going to go with Tua down the stretch here. And I don't think that's going to work out in their favor here as well. He's a very finesse-type quarterback. Ryan Fitzpatrick is a blue-collar quarterback who will do whatever it takes as necessary to get the job done. I feel Ryan Fitzpatrick gives them their best chance down the stretch to make the playoffs. And I think them sticking with Tua because he was such a high draft pick, 5th-round pick of the draft, could ultimately end up being a mistake for Miami.
Who do you favor out of those 4 teams to make it in the AFC? 7 seed.
I think the Baltimore Ravens.
Okay. We'll talk about them a little bit later on. Now, Arizona and the New York Giants. And this is going to be one of the games, a couple of games like this week. This is going to be one of the games this week where I'm not really going to look into the trends and stuff. I'm just looking at 2 teams playing in just differently, complete polar opposites. You have the Giants. They've won 4 straight. They've covered 5 out of 6. You have Arizona dropping 3 straight, also dropping 5 straight covers. Arizona has to go on the road here as the road favorite. They're 1-2 straight up and against the spread as a road favorite this year. Their only cover and win was against the winless Jets, who everybody beats this year. So it's looking like Daniel Jones is going to start. I'd give it about 75%. And they're not going to start Daniel Jones if they're not ready to let Daniel Jones go out and be Daniel Jones. So that's also important to note. If you see Daniel Jones playing on Sunday, you know he's going to play. Don't feel like, well, yeah, but he may not be 100%. No, if he doesn't play, if they're not going to be able to use the entire playbook with Daniel Jones, And I know he's got the hamstring, and anything can happen, including warm-ups on Sunday. So keep an eye on that. No question, the Giants are more dangerous with Jones than with Colt McCoy. I just don't like the way Arizona's playing. Confidence-wise, they're just bad right now. And maybe this is the game that gets them out of it. And if it does, then maybe they're back to being the 7th seed in the playoffs, which we thought was a given that they were going to make the playoffs a few weeks ago. Right now, they're in trouble. They have got to start winning quick before they run out of time. They're a desperate team. I still think they're a better team than the Giants. The problem is Kyler Murray. Kyler Murray's not the same right now. Shoulder, whatever the case, maybe he'll wake up. Maybe it's this week. But until he wakes up and starts playing like the Kyler Murray from over a month ago, I can't back Arizona.
Well, I understand where you're coming from. He's like a racehorse that's not 100% fit, and you really don't want to bet on racehorses that are not. But he's also a huge decisive edge over Colt McCoy and Daniel Jones in that same instance, if you will. Colt McCoy in his NFL football career does not know how to win football games at home. In the 13 home games he's been a starter, he's only won the money 3 times. And he's coming off of a win in his last start. That win snapped an 8-game personal losing streak for Colt McCoy. I don't know if he's got 2 wins in a row in him. And again, it goes back to the rally around the backup quarterback, which we saw last week. They rallied around him. He did terrific. They won their game. What does he do the next game? Now that there's game film on Colt McCoy off of 1 game coming into this particular game. Kyler Murray, I'm going to have to assume, and I realize what you're saying, he doesn't appear to be fit, but he wouldn't be playing if he weren't. He's probably not 100% of what he could be, but he's still Kyler Murray, and he's still a big edge over Colt McCoy in the football game. And remember, the Giants beat the Cardinals the last time they played. And when Kyler Murray is playing a game, and he's got revenge, okay? He's 8-1 against the spread, okay? So, or I should say the other way around. When Kyler Murray beat the other team, and the other team is trying to get their revenge, Murray won't let it happen. He's 8-1 against the spread, denying that. And he's 5-0 in the spread when Arizona's coming off a loss and doing just that. So I'm going to stay with Arizona in this football game. I think the Giants have climbed a really tall mountain here. It's time for a little bit of a respite, if you will, for a spot. And there's plenty of value in this football game because of the way the 2 teams are playing. The Giants hot and Arizona not. I'm going to play Arizona this football game to bring New York Giants back to reality on Sunday.
All right. Now, let's talk about the other team in the NFC East that's hot, the Washington Redskins. And just like the Giant game, I'm pretty much going to look away at trends and just say, look, Washington's playing the best football they played all season, just like the Giants. I really like the fact that I got Alex Smith going back to San Francisco. So I like this little, maybe if you can call it revenge or, wanting to look good against the team that drafted him and all that other stuff. And if I did want to throw a trend in there, San Francisco is 0-4 straight up and against the spread as a home favorite this year. I know they're not on their home field, but it is considered a home game. No game is really considered home or away anyway because there's no fans. But also, Washington 3-0-1 against the spread. Their last 4 as a road dog this year. I just like the way Washington is going right now. And Alex Smith and San Francisco and the defense is really the main reason that the Redskins are playing well. And it's a backup quarterback for San Francisco. So I'm gonna ride Washington at least another week. And might even go with the money line here because it's about a 3.5 spread, but it's a decent money line at plus 160.
I can understand Alex Smith back at quarterback for Washington. They're 3-1 straight up, end of the number, since he's been inserted as a starting quarterback, and they're on this nice roll. I think what the things are up against this week are knocking off Pittsburgh last week because there's a letdown for teams that knock off undefeated football teams the next week. They kind of look in the mirror too long to themselves and think they're invincible. You've got San Francisco, a team that's still mathematically alive in the playoff chase, and a football team here that was embarrassed, if you will, on this field in the last football game they played. I'm still going to stay with Kyle Shanahan and his football team here. Remember, never are you as bad as you look in your worst loss. Nor are you as good as you look in your best win. That may have been Washington's best win of the football season, but they're not that good, okay? They're still a football team that's struggling to get to 500, and the only reason they're in a playoff talk is because they live in the NFC East. I think this is a nice spot for Kansas City, or I mean San Francisco, I should say, for the price, because of what's going on here. I'm going to play the 49ers over the Washington football team.
And every time I was looking on here, you got the playbook.com magazine, and every time I look every week, and I'm going over every team, and every time I look at Pittsburgh this season, they hadn't lost, and I saw right here, you got this stat right here for where Pittsburgh is that says teams who upset the Steelers are 2-18 straight up and against the spread on the road when coming off consecutive straight up ATS wins. Well, so far there's only been one team that's upset the Steelers this year, and that team, who happened to be the Washington team, has come off consecutive straight up and against the spread wins.
Yes, it applies this week because it's the first one of the year. And it also goes back to a theory which has worked real, real well. And in a nutshell, it's basically playing against teams that have played Mike Tomlin's Steelers since he's been the head coach there. Those teams have really done poorly the next week, largely because of the beating they take, the physical beating against the Pittsburgh defense in years past. It's still working that way now. Pittsburgh's defense is pretty close to being tops in the AFC, if you will. And you've also got another factor here. Washington's on the road for their third straight road game. So you put everything together
and
here.
Out west.
Yes. I think this is a lot of value being away from home in their third straight game. I think there's a lot of value in this contest, in this game, if you will, to the San Francisco 49ers.
Speaking of Pittsburgh, we'll talk about the Sunday night game. And this is like the line change of the week. I know how much you like looking at line changes, because early it was Pittsburgh as a 2-point favorite. Then, after everything that happened this weekend, Buffalo's now a 2.5-point favorite. That is a big swing. And it's a big swing and an important swing for the reason that if you follow Pittsburgh football with trends, you know very well. And that is that the Pittsburgh Steelers are an awfully good team when they're getting points. And there are just some incredibly good trends that favor the Steelers here. They have covered 16 straight games. That's 16-0. As dogs of less than 7 points versus winning teams. That is awfully impressive. And we can throw in the fact that Mike Tomlin has 2 excellent trends as well. 12-1 against the spread as a road dog versus an opponent off back-to-back straight-up wins. And 20-5 against the spread as a dog versus an opponent off a straight up and against the spread win. There are some big trends that favor Pittsburgh. There are some bad trends that go against Buffalo. And the interesting thing is if you didn't look at the trends after the way Buffalo looked on Monday and after the way Pittsburgh has actually looked over the last few weeks, the first thing that you say is, I've definitely taken Buffalo. I mean, why would I touch Pittsburgh the way they've looked? I mean, because Pittsburgh's offense has looked terrible the last couple of weeks. And Buffalo, Josh Allen just went out there and had one of the best games of his season against San Francisco on Monday. But that's why you have to calm down. You don't wager or make predictions on Tuesday morning after Monday night games. You have to digest everything. Definitely make sure you go over these types of trends. And then you go, yes, okay, now I can probably see things in a different light. Especially a Pittsburgh team that might have been feeling a little bit queasy, undefeated and all that. Now they've got that off their backs. And all of a sudden, wait a second, we're being disrespected here. We're an underdog. We're number 1 seed in the AFC. We're an underdog. So I think it may be a tough game, and I think it will be a tough game to call, but it's awfully tough to not take Pittsburgh.
Well, when you talk about underdogs, you're talking about Ben Roethlisberger being right at the top of the list as quarterbacks in the National Football League when taking points. If you take a look at him, 36-19-3 to the spread as a dog. Even better, Pittsburgh, when they're playing in games, taking points against teams off back-to-back wins. Pittsburgh 18-3-2 against the spread. There's some pretty powerful numbers and trends that go to Pittsburgh in this football game. And I think this game comes rivals. It's one of 2 games that are qualify for the ABO Game of the Week. Always beware of the obvious. The obvious being Baltimore or Buffalo looked so good in their win last week, and Pittsburgh looked like they struggled. So what does everybody want to do? They want to fade this lousy one-loss Pittsburgh Steelers football team against a team from Buffalo that's on the rise right now. I say that they qualify as the ABO game of the week. Always beware of the obvious. I think the other game is obviously the LA Chargers. Everybody want to fade them off that 45-0 home loss, but that could end up being a major mistake as well. I'll be on Pittsburgh this week, plus the points against Buffalo in their comfortable underdog role.
And then on Monday night, Baltimore and Cleveland. And this is a game where not only does my opinion before looking at the trends work, but so do the trends. I really like Cleveland in this spot. I think this is their opportunity to give it back to one of their rivals in their division, especially after getting whitewashed week 1 by 32 points. We talked about the Cleveland-Tennessee game last week, so we liked Cleveland in the role. They were 5.5 when we were doing the show. It went down to 4 by game time, and we all know what happened, the blowout and so forth. Cleveland, not only have they lost 4 straight, but they've covered 7 straight as a winning team in games 13-16 when they get less than 10 points or they're favored. So it doesn't matter what the situation is. If they end up being the favorite, on Monday, don't worry about it. That still matters. That trend still works for you. And then Baltimore, 3-18 against the spread in their last 21 games as a division favorite off of a non-division game, taking on a division team with a winning record. That includes an 0-1 this year. So they were 3-17 before the season. They're 3-18 during the season. I think they'll be 3-19 by the time we talk next week.
I concur. This is a Cleveland Browns football team that still isn't earning a lot of respect. And it's hidden in the fact, if you will, Greg, that game that they had against Tennessee last week might have been a huge get-up game for Cleveland, and they got it real early, especially at the half. And then it appeared for all intents and purposes that they laid down in the second half. Well, the fact of the matter is they were never going to replicate the second half showing that they put up in the first half of the football game.
Yeah.
They were on cruise control the second half of the football contest here. They still went into Tennessee as a dog and beat them straight up on the cuff to avenge a very, very bad loss. That's the key in this football game. Cleveland's coming in this football game looking to avenge a very, very bad loss to Baltimore in their season opening game. I believe it was like 38-6, something like that, when Cleveland lost their first game of the season at Baltimore. So that will weigh heavily on the Browns' minds here this week as well. Whatever it was that they talked about to use that incentive to get them up for Tennessee will be the same factor they'll use here to get them up against Baltimore in this contest. And you got a Baltimore football team that, even though they won their last game coming into here, they were riding a 3-game losing streak before doing just that. And prior to that, they were 17-2 their previous 19 games before this football season come about. I still don't think Baltimore's back to even close to where they were before in the past, and I think Cleveland's a vastly improved football team this year from last. I'm going to ride the momentum with the revenging Cleveland Browns in this game on Monday night.
Yeah, and let's also keep on a couple other factors. They were revenging Tennessee last week, last year's loss. This one's much fresher because it happened this year, week 1, and it's a division opponent. So I think it's even ramped up more that Cleveland, if you thought they were ready last week, they're going to be even more ready this week.
Yeah, especially playing at home on a Monday night football game. We know the home field doesn't weigh like it did before in the past, but just being at home in the comfy confines of home for the Cleveland Browns, I think will work for them in this contest, as you say, being a division opponent seeking that revenge.
You mentioned the LA Charger-Atlanta game. The Falcons are a 2.5-point favorite in that one. There is a trend that works against the Chargers in this one. Once again, you can find it right here in the Playbook magazine on the Charger page. They are 0-7 straight up and against the spread. Their last 7 home games versus NFC South teams, including 0-1 this year when they lost to Carolina. They've lost 5 out of 6. They've dropped 6 straight covers. They lost 45-0 last week. But you seem to indicate that you like the Chargers this week?
I do like the Chargers. They qualify as being the most embarrassed team on the card this week. The ABO situation, as I mentioned here, and
Yes.
Atlanta's really struggled on the AFC road. They've lost 6 times in a row to the money here. And you look at this game statistically, you put tape over the names of the teams, you think the Chargers are the team that's in playoff position here and has a playoff seed wrapped up. But they're not because they can't win close football games.
And they need a new head coach.
And they need a new head coach, right? It's that Linning factor here, okay? The Anthony Linning factor we talked about last week of losing close football games. They didn't lose a close football game last week. They had their worst loss ever under Anthony Lynn last week. I love teams that are red-faced and embarrassed, especially coming back to the scene of the crime where it happened last week. And you've got an Atlanta Falcon football team here who, for arguably, who are the Atlanta Falcons? I mean, we've made cases for them in the past, especially in underdog roles, but not going out on the road and laying points here. I think this is a red-faced, embarrassed home dog that will come and play hard this Sunday.
Yeah, they're just 1-4 straight up and against the spread as a favorite this year, Atlanta.
There you go.
Much different. Quickly also, I actually like Denver against Carolina. Carolina's giving 3.5. Carolina, I just don't like them in this favorite role. They're 0-2 this year as a favorite. They lost to Chicago. They lost to Atlanta. Let's not forget, Matt Rule has got to get off this bye hex that he had at Baylor. His Baylor teams after byes weren't very good. So we'll see how he is after a bye here. But I also like the fact that Denver 4-2 against the spread is a road dog on the season, coming off, a good loss at Kansas City. So I think Denver might be primed for a win this week after dropping 4 of the last 5.
Well, I can't get past Teddy Bridgewater and his record in non-division football games. Sort of like Mike Zimmer, the head coach at Minnesota, Teddy Bridgewater, the quarterback, who, by the way, put up a lot of those numbers with Zimmer when he was together with him. If you take a look at Bridgewater in non-division games, he's 24-4 against the spread as a starter, now coming in here off a loss. And you've got a Denver football team that's not very good in the second of back-to-back road games, just 2-9 to the spread. I think there's a huge edge at the quarterback position here with Carolina and Bridgewater over Drew Lock, who, by the way, is dead last in quarterback ratings in the National Football League this year, even worse than Sam Darnold. So I'll stay with Teddy Bridgewater, the better quarterback, with his team off a loss.
And then finally, a game that you probably wouldn't think of taking and liking a lot, but I actually like the Bengals against the Cowboys. Cowboys are a 3.5-point favorite. And the way they're playing, they shouldn't be a favorite over anybody. And to tell you the truth, if they play the Jets this week, I think the Jets would probably beat them. And Cincinnati, I know there's no Burrow, and they can't really put up a lot of points, but the defense has actually played pretty well, all things considered. They got a couple of interesting trends working their way. They are 2-3 straight up, 4-0-1 against the spread at home this year. So they have not dropped a spread at home this season. They've covered 11 straight games before they play the Pittsburgh Steelers, which is what they're going to be doing on Monday Night Football next week. And the Cowboys have dropped all 5 games as a favorite this year, 0-5 against the spread. They've lost 6 out of 7. You could tell they were giving up again in the Baltimore game last night. I just think, look, Cincinnati's not giving up. They're still playing hard. They still know Burrow will be back. There's still a lot of excitement in the opportunity of next season and so forth. So I think Cincinnati's actually a pretty decent dog at home.
I do too, except for the fact that I acknowledge when Joe Burrow went down, this team might end up going on the witness protection list, wondering where they are, what happened to them, where they slip off to. They could be MIA. And they played that way thus far so far. But you're talking about the Dallas Cowboys here, okay? The Dallas Cowboys, but going out as road favorites. Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
The last 7 times that they've been out there and laid points, they've only won 2 of the games straight up. And you've also got Mike McCarthy, who's been terrible in his career of late in games. Take a look at him in games against 250 or less opponents, really sad sack opponents. He's lost the money 8 straight times in a row. I don't know why Dallas wakes up and revives themselves this week. They haven't done it all season long. They've done nothing to warrant laying points on the road. I'm with you. I'm on the Cincinnati Bengals.
The only thing that I think is intriguing is you have Andy Dalton returning to Cincinnati, yes, but there's nobody in the stands. And I don't know. I mean, maybe he feels, but really, what is he going to feel? That he should be back, like Cincinnati has done something wrong to him? I mean, they gave him a good contract. They gave him a lot of money. He played there a long time. Joe Burrow is clearly the guy. So, if he feels that the Bengals did him wrong and he needs to have some sort of revenge in the game, well, that's on him. I don't think that's the case. So I wouldn't worry about that too much.
No, I don't think so either here. If it would have been nice to see if there would have been a full house in attendance there, they would have received a real warm ovation. There's no question about that. And that might have pumped them up a little bit more, but they're not there. It's not going to happen. He's going to have to go out there and perform and do the job with the Dallas Cowboys playing behind him. And I just don't think it works. This is a nice spot for Cincinnati to pick up a win.
All right, Mark. So playbook.com, that's the website you go to. As you can see right there on the screen, playbook.com. Can't make it any easier for you to find out everything about what Mark Lawrence can do for you, including, of course, the emails that you get. Every day you have the opportunity to receive the emails that will give you tidbits on college football trends and NFL trends and all sorts of other interesting notes and so forth in both college and pro football. And then you get your weekly publication and your midweeks and so forth. So playbook.com, that's where you want to go. And it's also college basketball season.
Yes, it is. It's basketball season right around the corner. I'm going to start handicapping that when the NBA resumes their season. But if your information is what it is you're looking for, you'll find it all online at playbook.com.
Thanks, Mark. We'll talk to you next week.
Hey, Greg, be well, stay safe, enjoy the games, and I'll catch you next week.